Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Dean Phillips. I want to thank our sponsors, the Precision Metal Forming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation, for being willing to take on this task of hosting and sponsoring our show. I have the distinct pleasure of having Cary Rosenberg from Watts Water here with me today. I'd like to thank him. He is the Senior Manager for Global Supply, Quality, and Sourcing. Cary, thank you for being here today.
Hi, Dean. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Full disclosure, I do want to say that Cary and I have been members of the SME and have been on member council and on a bunch of other committees. So Cary and I have known each other for quite a few years, so if it sounds like we've known each other a while, it's because we have. I want to thank him for being here today and traveling all the way to our host city of Jackson, Tennessee, where we're recording this today, which is a little unusual for us. I'm also going to ask quite a few questions today from his background in supply chain. But I do want to give him an opportunity to first tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, so Dean, I've been with Watts Water Technologies now for 17 years in supply chain, quality, and manufacturing, really primarily working around supplier quality of our suppliers. And Watts has a very long history, being around since 1874. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. And we like to think of ourselves as the world's largest plumbing and heating company. We have a very large portfolio and a very deep base of products in the plumbing and heating space. So commercial, industrial, as well as having over 600 patents worldwide in water quality as well.
Excellent. And I do want to say that that's an area that probably have not had a lot of guests on to talk about, is in the plumbing field and in water control. So I probably will sound a little more novice in that area than I have on other shows, but tell me a little bit about why you got into this.
So I got into manufacturing early on. In junior high school. I really thought I was going to be an architect. And at the time, my girlfriend's father was an architect, and he pointed me towards the mechanical side and the manufacturing side more than building buildings, which was interesting. Always liked putting things together and, being very creative with, thinking of how to do things a little differently at times. So it's fun.
Yeah. I think that's why most of, at least the engineers I come across, that's one of the areas that they find interesting, is problem solving or learning how things work, and that's what really gets them involved in this side of the business. So tell me a little bit about supply chain and how you see things currently and where you see them going in the next 5 years.
Yeah, so I'm sure the audience has heard of integrated suppliers and, contract manufacturing and consignment inventory and all of those types of activities. And I think what is lost at time is relationship management, right? So I think that's a very big piece of anything in procurement or quality or supply chains or sourcing or purchasing. It's the supplier relationship or just relationship management in general, which is very important to get out and see your suppliers or your customers. If you're in sales, it's very similar activity. Where do I see it going? I don't think it's going to change that much in some cases. I think there's a lot of different levers to pull if you're a company on a global scale of manufacturing in this day and age. And, the levers might be very different for a large company versus a small company, but in other ways, they're very similar as well. Everybody's trying to buy on price, everybody wants serviceability, cost, delivery, and those types of activities. But really, I think what people want is when they have a problem to pick up a phone and get a hold of somebody at 8 o'clock in the evening. And one, they answer your call. And two, they give you the answers you're looking for, or at least, again, they answer your call, right?
Absolutely. I don't think that ever changes. I think that people want a company that they work with to be responsive. I think that's all that most people ask for. In your experience in working with this, what technologies have changed or developed as far as how you do your job in supply chain, how you go out and deal with suppliers? What technologies have you used that have changed over the past few years to get to that point?
So in the last 5 years, I'd say a lot of what we do is a lot of data mining, right? So we constantly are looking backwards to understand supplier on-time performance or pricing or delivery quantities or forecasting for how much we think we're going to use in the future of an item, and trying to make sure that our suppliers are prepared to handle our demand. If that's forward-looking supplier schedules, which is nothing more than maybe a blanket contract for some people with a forecasting model built into a purchase order, right? So, depending on what terms you want to use and how you want to look at these things, the tools are very similar, which is really using the data analytics to determine what the future horizon is going to be.
As far as that type of information and gathering of that, where do you see smart manufacturing taking you?
So I'm excited for that for the future. I think there's a lot of opportunities around some of those things. If it's just creating a core with rapid prototyping or additive to cast one object versus making 10,000 could be very helpful in the near future. So that type of technology, I definitely see a place from a procurement perspective, a supply chain perspective, a relationship management perspective, and just a downright a manufacturing need, right? Not every company wants to buy 10,000 or 100,000 of an item. If I have a unique customer and we're trying to do more systems today as our business goes, and not just one-off valves or regulators or backflow preventers, but a whole building system. If you're going to build a new hotel, there's a whole bunch of different pieces that are required. We'd like to do that whole package, and we'd treat that one hotel on average of 221 hotel rooms as one system. So if that's the case, maybe my magic number is one main water supply coming into the building, so I need one item there, but then you would branch off into the lavatories, and there might be 221 commodes in the building, so that would require 221 shutoff valves for the water supply for the toilet. So, our numbers might be all over the place, and really my point is one-off manufacturing sometimes would be very handy to have one water main coming into the building to have one valve for that. So if you could do additive manufacturing and just make one valve versus a minimum order quantity of 221 or 10,000, that'd be extremely beneficial.
Are your customers asking you to provide a one-stop shopping solution now more than they used to, as opposed to supplying individual components? Are they asking you more to supply big packages to solve problems?
Oh, absolutely. And in some cases, we actually become the bank for our customer, which nobody likes to talk about those things. But, payment terms become huge when you're extending credit to our customers at 187 business days, right? Or calendar days as well in some cases. But yeah, we're doing more systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide them complete water quality solutions. So it could be thermostats in the room going on to a radiator that then connects up to the water supply, sinks, faucets, tubs, showers, etc., backflow preventers, building faucets for outside sprinkler systems. Some people might call it a spigot. I mean, there's different terms for some of our products. Ball valves, etc.
I've always been amazed that when you look at large projects, large buildings, hotels, anything that has a significant number of rooms and items that you're going to be supplying, how much planning goes into that? Now, do they come in more well-suited now for the planning, or is it kind of still a lot of the old school of, well, here's what we think we're going to need, and they ask you more for engineering help too?
So it really does depend. Our customers sometimes are very far removed from the process, and I know that might sound strange, but if you think about a general contractor building something, and then ultimately the owner of the building relies on an architect and a general contractor to build it with the architect to design it, and then it might go out to a subcontractor to do something, and then finally until it gets to us, we could be removed 5 levels in some cases. And then you have a building maintenance person who has to actually run the system after all these other people are long gone. So some of the engineering is very well done, but there is a skills gap, if that's what you were alluding to in some cases. And we are doing more system development and system designs for our customers than ever before. With our radiant floor heating systems, as an example, we are the experts in that space. So for somebody else to design that system wouldn't make sense. We understand the heat loss factors. You give us your design of your building where the windows are and the doors and things like that, and we could really set that system up for you. So we have a very skilled group of talented people that can do those things, as well as some very good engineers and architects out there in the field as well. Sure.
Excellent. Speaking of workforce development, how much of that has impacted you, either from an internal standpoint or from a supply chain standpoint, as far as finding good qualified individuals?
It's a real challenge. It's a challenge for our manufacturing operations. It's a challenge for our material management. It's a challenge throughout our whole organization. It's even a challenge for our customers, that we've now set up regional training centers, very localized, to bring in the apprentice type programs and the skilled trades into our unbiased product line offering type training classes to explain how to prevent water from getting contaminated in a building system. As an example, that would be our backflow product line type products. So it's not only classroom and textbook, but it's also hands-on applications to train the end users on how to use the product and maintenance the product and design a system around the use of the product to ensure the quality of water. So it's becoming more and more of a need. And as some of our workforce does retire out and the younger generation is starting to come in, that is very talented in some cases, but they need a little bit of training.
I'm sure that part of that, and I don't mean this to sound in a negative way, but it's somewhat self-serving that if you teach your customers, the better off they are and understand how to use your products better, the less service calls you get, the less complaints, the less replacements and things like that.
Yeah, so we're really not doing it necessarily to promote our brand name. We're really trying to do it for the industry, and we see it as an industry need. Of course, anybody listening is going to say, well, of course they want people to buy their product, and of course we do as well. But that's really not the purpose of doing this. Our most senior management team, our shareholders, our CEO of our company, and others have really felt that this is an industry challenge, and we really need to help the industry. And again, being around since 1874, we see it as an industry issue and not necessarily a Watts Water Technologies problem. If we could explain how to use the products a little bit better and have better installations out there, then I think everybody's going to win as well.
Right. And I think that's absolutely true. I think we're kind of in the same boat. We see that safety and automation are very key to the global picture of how we're going to succeed, and that if we help people to be safer, then at the end of the day, it benefits everybody. So Cary, tell me a little bit about where you think 5 years from now, where Watt's going to be at that point, and what steps are going to be changing in order for you to get there.
Yeah, so Dean, in some cases, I think not a lot's going to change. In other cases, I think there's going to be huge changes to the industry. I think the water quality of water on the planet Earth is more important today than it's ever been in the past. And I think some of the remote regions are going to see more need and demand for it. As you know, even the standard southern states today have a major heat wave going on, and even New Hampshire's hit 102 degrees in the past couple of weeks. That's been hotter than Miami, Florida. So water is important to everybody across the U.S. and across the globe, and I think there'll be more of an outreach into some of the remote areas that we might not have seen in the past. And I also think technology is going to play into some of that as well.
I know that some of the new technologies, like things like augmented reality, additive manufacturing, and things like nanotechnology have been some of the areas that have been expanding. How do you see some of these being leveraged as far as your business goes?
Well, I think AI is going to have an impact. I think it's going to help us do manufacturing internally. I think it's going to help some of our supply chain do manufacturing on our behalf. I think AI is going to be a field that's going to really have tentacles and get into a lot of different places that maybe people don't think about it at first. In some cases, you have Google doing cars. You have with battery technology. We're designing products that also require electricity or battery feedback in some cases. Can't get into all of those things right now, but there's a whole bunch of different types of product lines and product industry that will definitely be out in the future. One simple example that we're doing today is QR codes. Right, so a little off, but you take your cell phone, you snap a picture of a cardboard box with the QR code, and you could get the work instructions on how to assemble the product, or what is the product, or the specifications of the product, or the technical instructions of the product, etc. So QR codes and asset management is a very big push for us right now, just to get companies or people and companies the benefit of understanding what's in the box versus opening up a cardboard box and touching it and feeling it and reading all sorts of things you could sort with the technology just on a cell phone.
I know that's been kind of going back to the Bridgestone Firestone issue when they had their situation with their failure, and it was untraceable to any real degree, so they had to recall a lot more product than they would have liked to, but because they didn't have at that time the proper identifiers on there to segment that apart. Now, is that one of the areas that you're referring to as far as some of like the QR codes and some of those things for following and tracking parts beyond that?
No, so we're not doing that for our manufacturing a product. We're doing that really for somebody who goes into a do-it-yourself business of some type, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the Menard type stores as an example, Ace Hardware. There's a product on the shelf. There's 2 or 3 products that are very similar, and they don't know which one really to purchase. So they could snap the picture on the box of the QR code, read about the product in a little bit more detail without opening up a box and trying to figure it out, and they could do comparisons of them and things like that. That's really where we see some advanced technology fitting in to a very old line type company today.
Very interesting. Do you think that as far as things like the industry challenges that you see, what are some of those areas that are concerns from your standpoint?
So again, it's workforce, right? I mean, really, workforce is a challenge, I think, for any business in this day and age. This is very timely, but tariffs is also a challenge right now for companies, depending on what you're manufacturing and where you're manufacturing and what it might be. Because, uncertainty is never a good thing when you have multiple operations all over the world trying to make different parts and products and taking care of customer needs.
Right. Speaking about workforce and where workforce development is, we all know that that's a challenge for us. Are there specific things that you guys are doing to try and address that from an internal standpoint?
Well, so we are partnering with the states and the local areas and the municipalities and local governments for different types of training for different associates in different locations. We have a very diverse footprint. Our company is a lot larger than people might realize it to be. I mean, we have operations in New Hampshire, North Carolina, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, and I just got started, right? So, I mean, Canada, California, right? Nevada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not mentioning our European and Chinese operation as well. So in the U.S. in particular, we really are partnering with different people and organizations locally to try to make a difference with our needs. Mm-hmm. Going back to some of the industry challenges for a minute, water security could be interesting too in the future. Different companies doing different things in that space, that might be something to watch a little bit. And especially with drought conditions and things like that as well. And again, just water availability, and then of course all of the different types of microisms in water, right? The different types of bacteria and things like that would also be another potential space to pay attention to in the future. I think there's going to be some really good, interesting things coming out of that space, and AI would kind of fit in some of that area as well. I can't get into more today, though.
Right. Is that an area that you find it difficult? I mean, obviously, the more specific you go in a technology and the higher up you go, the more difficult it is to find that workforce that you need. Is that something that you see being more something you're going to train internally, or something that you feel that you can find or contribute to in the educational workforce to reach that level?
Yeah. So, Dean, I understand your question, and I know how you're setting it up for me to answer. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little bit more broad than that. I think it's going to depend, right? So if we need a physicist to go and develop a cure or a product to go around Legionnaire's disease, as an example, in a water supply, it might be a little bit different than training employees on how to assemble a system to detect that, right? So it's going to vary depending on which part of the organization we're looking within. Generally speaking, we would like to train our employees for our products, and we are trying to do more of systems than ever before. So to the end user, we're trying to give you a solution to take care of your problem that you might see within your building system, and we would handle a lot of that training internally.
Excellent. When you talk about some of the areas that you've seen changing in technology, do you see, is that an area that you see with more rapid prototyping kind of, or is that something that you think that that some of the technologies like the typical ones we have now, whether it be fabrication or casting, do you think that there's a place for a marriage of that, or do you think things like rapid prototyping will overcome some of those?
So I think it's a great question. I'm not sure. And what I mean by that is it would depend on which one of our product lines we're looking at. We do have a lot of different product lines and catalog, a lot of depth to our products. We actually own a manufacturing facility that is a casting house, right? So we do our own castings as well as machining with CNC machines and assembly. So in some cases, to overcome a very large investment, very large scale, making thousands and thousands of pieces, every hour, would be a little bit more difficult to do rapid prototyping than doing a barge system on an ocean vessel, which we also do those systems out of our HF Scientific division in Florida. So the ballast water moving from the right side to the left side of the ship, to also clean the water or treat the water before they dump it into the different harbors and things, would be more of a opportunity. I'm not saying we're going to do this, but it would be more of an opportunity with a one-off system than doing tens of thousands of pieces.
Sure.
So it would depend on our product line, and it would depend on which area we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're just about out of time here. I want to thank Cary Rosenberg from Watts Water Technologies for being here on our show today. I'd like to thank our host, Precision Metal Forming Association, for sponsoring us today. We really appreciate them and appreciate their interest in educating our workforce and educating the future workers in our industries. So I want to thank them for that. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate it.